Welcome to PACTV's one-on-one interviews with the candidates running for the open Senate seat in the Plymouth and Barnstable District, which was left vacant due to the departure of Senator Vinnie DiMacedo. This district covers 3 towns in Barnstable County, Bourne, Falmouth, and Sandwich, and 3 towns in Plymouth County, Kingston, Pembroke, and Plymouth. Each of the 7 candidates, 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans, will be given the same questions in the same order and be given approximately 3 minutes to answer each question. For the last 3 minutes of the interview, the candidate can freely talk about subject matters they want to either clarify, revisit, or new topics that they may want to introduce. To begin each interview, the candidate will be introduced and tell us their town of residence, their current occupation, and any board or committee participation they're currently serving in, and their website or social media platform for their campaign. Within the 3-minute time frame, I may ask a follow-up question just to clarify or confirm information. If the candidates do not take the full 3 minutes to answer the questions, they can add that time on to the end of the interview and use it however they please. Once all the candidates' Q&As have been recorded, we will air them all together in alphabetical order by last name, and each candidate will have their own interview to share and promote in any way they see fit. PACTV is committed to bringing our viewers information about candidates, so for a listing of all our services and coverage, please visit our website, pactv.org/elections. PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. And we're pleased to have on set today Jesse Brown, who is a Republican candidate for Senate from Plymouth. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before we get to the main questions, a couple little questions about you. What is your current occupation?
I am a business owner in the wireless communications field.
Okay. And do you now or have you ever served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
Right now, I am on the Labor Workforce Committee with the state. I also serve on the Economic Committee with the state, and I sit on the Plymouth Chamber of Commerce as the chair of the Veterans Committee.
Okay. And where can your constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
On votejessebrown.com, or they can go on the Facebook page at Jesse Brown State Senate.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to go into the questions. Question number 1. Given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
Well, being in business, what we have to do with that in the nonprofit sector that I'm in, you have to build relationships and collaborate with a lot of people. So going up to the State House, that's one thing that we have to focus on right there. You have to build the relationships to work with everybody and not be stonewalled on a constant basis. So I plan to go up there, introduce myself, work with everybody, and build a great working relationship.
And what about knowledge about the individual towns? How are you going to come up to speed on what's important?
Yeah, I could hold business roundtable meetings with the local businesses, work with the selectmen of the towns, work with every local official. I'm a big proponent for smaller government, so I'll be working with the towns on a constant basis to always know the constant issues that are going on.
Okay, question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change, and how do they dovetail with the state's priorities and initiatives regarding that same topic?
The number one biggest thing with the climate is to be prepared for any issues that happen. We know some of the towns, they're MVP towns, and with that number one thing is to be prepared, to have those studies done to find out what the issues are. Obviously, the coastal issues are probably the number one issue all along. I mean, pretty much the whole district, except for one town, is along the coastline. Right. So we have to be prepared for that, secure funding for that, and then advocate at the same time to get those projects done.
Do you know what they're doing at the state level regarding climate change for our area, our district?
As of right now, I do not.
Okay.
I do not know. That's why I go up there to learn as the first question.
Okay.
And it's just quick learner, fast learner. But you got to know the issues and to advocate for them. That's the big thing.
Okay. Makes sense. Question number 3. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and limited affordable options for them. Workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here. And affordable housing in general for either renters or buyers. Given that these are challenges that are out there, what is your plan to tackle them?
The biggest thing I see in that is to change the zoning. You have to change the zoning for it to create, I mean, it's a simple thing. It's a supply-demand issue. When there's more supply, there's the demand has to be there. If there's more demand, there's going to be less supply. So we have to create more supply for the demand. When that happens, it's a very common sense thing. If there's more out there, the prices, the rents will be less. So number one would be the zoning aspect, to change it so builders, they can build more, but also you want to do it smart. You don't want to just build completely buildings everywhere. But the other thing, being knocking on doors, that I've been probably knocked on over 2,000 doors already, and I've talked to a lot of seniors, and that's their number one fear, is that the prices just keep going up and up, and they're afraid to lose their homes. So with that, I think more, you got to lower the taxes first so they can stay in their homes, and I think that's a bigger issue than that, to keep them in their homes, not move them out of their homes.
What about affordable housing, though, for seniors that want to downsize?
Yeah, well, obviously that's changing the regulations and the rules. When you downsize, you're building smaller homes.
Yeah, right.
You're not building larger homes that you have to have X amount of footage, frontage, or you can't build extra accessory buildings on your own property. Families can get together and they can build for their in-laws, but they don't have to do necessarily an in-law, which is hard to do. I mean, I've done it, so there's always complications with that. So the bureaucracy, you don't want to be stonewalled. We have to loosen those regulations and rules. I mean, I always call them barriers. The rules and regulations are barriers, so we have to loosen those.
Okay. Fourth question. What do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
You deal a lot with the mental health aspect. You deal with mental health sometimes on a personal level, sometimes, so you see where people need the help. And obviously we get into some situation now with the mental health, we get into different crises with the pills. So, with prescription drugs. So with that, the mental health has to be dealt with treatment, potentially maybe a little bit more facilities for that. It can't be a stigma that mental health is bad. So we have to focus a lot on that. Obviously, it goes, another big thing that I'm a pro-Second Amendment person. So the mental health aspect is big, obviously, in that. So we want to tackle the mental health aspect, and it will be one of my top priorities.
Do you think that mental health is tied specifically with the opioid problem?
In my opinion, there's definitely a connection. Yes, there's definitely a connection with that.
Okay. All right.
Can I just a little bit on that?
Oh, yeah, please.
Obviously, you have the PTSD, being a veteran, and you have the PTSD.
Yeah, go ahead.
And, with the mental health aspect, you come back, you're on the medications on a constant basis. I just know personally, veterans that I've seen, that I've talked to, the amounts of medications that they're on. I mean, it's ludicrous, the amounts of medication they're on. So I think if, medications can control things, but at the same time, you don't want to rely on them for your whole life. We have to treat what's wrong.
And there seems to be a lot in the news lately about the veterans and their mental health. Do you think that our state does enough to support them?
Well, I think we have, in general, I think we have the best veteran services in the country. It's just actually going out and getting it, the veterans going out and getting it, having the nonprofit that when I had the nonprofit, we see that the veterans, it's so much paperwork that they don't want to do, but working with the VSOs in town, they do a tremendous job of all the towns, the VSOs, they help them navigate that process. So if I would put Massachusetts up with the veteran services against any state.
Wow, that's really nice to hear. Okay, so for the remaining minutes, and you have about 8 minutes if you'd like to take it, you can talk about anything you'd like to, anything that we've covered that you want to do more about, something we haven't discussed, personal, anything you want.
Well, so one thing, I got a question the other day that for my daughter, we're driving around town, we're campaigning, she's my little compadre when we're out there. But one thing she said to me, she's like, Daddy, she's like, I see your signs everywhere. She's like, do you think that that's weird? And with you looking at it, when you see your own name out there on a constant basis. So I thought about that. I just told her no. I said, I don't think that it's weird. But because what I say, when I look at it, what I see is the people that I talk to all the time. So like I said, we knocked on already about 2,000 doors, and we met tremendous people out there. And to hear their stories and their concerns, when you're driving by and you see the signs and we see more of the signs, it's motivating me to do more. And I will be a great advocate and have an effective voice. That's like my big thing right now is in anything that I've done in life. I've been in service since I was 17, and I've been helping people every single day. I love to see people succeed. I love helping people, and I plan to keep doing that up at the State House, at the local level, and through the rest of my life. Whether I win or I lose, I will continue to do that. Yes.
Is there anything surprising that you have found as you knock on doors?
They're great people. I mean, the people out there, the people that you meet, the stories that they tell, I mean, from veterans to business owners to the seniors. I mean, the seniors are the greatest ones to talk to because they have so much experience.
Sure.
I mean, I'm talking to a gentleman yesterday who was on Air Force One, talking to somebody who was with General Petraeus, and just the stories that you hear on a constant basis. But like I was saying before, their biggest concern are taxes. I've seen that. It's 20 to 30% of the doors that get answered. The taxes are their biggest fear. It's a fear of theirs. They don't want it to go up. They need it just to stay stagnant. Not even go up. They're just concerned about them going up. I mean, I want to have them go down, but also we need taxes no matter. But we have to keep it at a level that's fair for everybody.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have been with Jesse Brown, who is a candidate for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat, a Republican from Plymouth. PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. We're welcoming today Becky Coletta, who is a Democrat from Pembroke. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for being here. What is your current occupation?
So at this time, I am a lawyer with a law firm. I'm a realtor, and I consider myself a macro social worker, meaning that I'm working on a lot of issues as a social worker to make change.
Okay. Do you or have you served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
So I've served on the Hanson Board of Selectmen as an elected official. I serve on the Pembroke Planning Board as an elected official. I've done that for 5.5 years, been through my second election. I've been chairing that board for the last 1.5 years. I serve as a delegate to the Old Colony Planning Council. I've been a member of the Democratic Town Committees in Hanson and Pembroke since 2003. I serve as a volunteer on the Human Rights Committee of Road to Responsibility, and I have done that as an attorney and social worker for the last 10 years.
Okay. And where can constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
www.beckycoletta.com, that's 1 L and 2 T's, or they can go to Facebook and search for Becky Coletta.
Okay. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. We're going to start with the first question. Given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
So I've already been reaching out to legislators and looking at some of the bills that are more important to me, like the carbon pricing bill, the Senator Spilka, State Senate President Spilka, just released her behavioral health plan. I've been analyzing those behavioral health plans with my advisors. I have someone who spent a lot of time in behavioral health who's working with me to sort of parse out the various proposals that are out there right now. Transportation is a big priority of the State Senate President this spring, and so I'm trying to get up to speed on some of the alternatives that she's working on for addressing our transportation issues. I've also been looking at a lot of these issues for a long time, right? I'm somebody who tries to keep track of what's going on at the State House, because I know that a lot of times the federal government can't do what we need to happen on the ground. So I've been watching these things. I've worked, my law partner is a state rep, and so I've been working over time looking with him at different issues that are coming before the legislature. And I'll continue to do so. Last week, I had the opportunity to meet with one of the proponents of the Safe Communities Act and hear about how they're meeting with the police chiefs to try to tweak some things in that act, and hoping that we find some resolution on the Safe Communities Act this spring. So there's a lot going on: behavioral health, transportation, carbon bills, energy efficiency bills. There's a lot happening out there that's going to affect our district, and I'd like to get in there and work right away.
And what about the individual towns, which you had 6 towns that you'll be representing? How do you get up to speed on what's going on in those particular towns?
Well, I mean, I've been out meeting with people in all 6 towns. There's no town that I haven't spent time talking to people about what the issues are in their towns. And I just am continuing to do that for the next 3 weeks. Part of it is running a campaign, and part of it is getting ready to serve in office. Mm-hmm. And by listening to people, hearing people who are coming up and asking me about their specific issues, they may be town specific or they may be issue specific, but I am hearing from people daily who are telling me about the issues in their town that they'd like to see fixed. In Pembroke, I know those issues better, right, because I've been on the planning board. But when you're working at the state legislature, you also have to be able to pull together a lot of different experiences across a wide range of issues and work at a sort of aerial view of what's going on, and have the town officials in each of the 6 towns, not playing favorites between the 6 towns, but each of the 6 towns tell you what they need and what support they need from you.
Okay. And question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change? And how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding the same topic?
So I spent a lot of years working on coastal engineering. I was part of a firm that did coastal engineering down in Louisiana, in New York. We worked on post-Sandy disaster recovery, Florida, Texas. I've seen a lot of how coastal engineering works and how those projects pull together state, local, and federal money. So part of the job of the state senator is to pull together state, local, and federal constituents and silos of money and try to put together programs that are going to be effective to address our coastal erosion issues, to address as the sea levels rise, our estuaries become more endangered as saltwater infiltrates the estuaries to a greater extent and goes into our watersheds. So I've been out talking to people at the DEP, talking to people locally at the watershed associations, and talking to them about what their priorities are so that we can start to pull together the various factions and the various interest groups and the money to try to address our coastal issues. In addition, we need to make sure that we address our drinking water issues, which will be affected by some of these global warming and infrastructure issues as we go. When we talk, the one thing that unites all 6 towns is that pretty much everyone's either a coastal community or, like Pembroke, where we're not a coastal community, we have more ponds per square foot than probably anybody around. Plymouth has one of the largest aquifers anywhere. There are a lot of resources that need to be looked at. This isn't sort of a one issue. When we say environmental or climate change, it's not just one issue. We have to make sure that Vineyard Wind gets through the hurdles that are being placed at the federal level. We have to make sure that we open up through our programs with regard to renewable energy. We've slowed down solar production as we got rid of some of the, we don't have sufficient net metering capabilities to really encourage the growth in that industry. There's a lot of work we need to do, and it's not just one issue.
Okay. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and limited affordable options. Workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here. And affordable housing in general for either renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them?
So we started this spring in Pembroke, where we passed a cluster zoning bylaw. It wasn't easy to do. It was a town that is not particularly pro-development, and we did it because we looked at how do we take large pieces of property, preserve open space so that we still conserve open space, bring in some affordable housing, ensure that any project of that size has an affordable component, And how do we design something that is going to maybe be less impactful? What we came up with in Pembroke was an average of 2 bedrooms per unit and over 55 housing. That was something that we did at the local level. Regionally, I think we're going to also have to look at the bill that's out there right now to lower the standard for passing zoning bylaw changes from 3/4 to a majority. If we keep blocking efforts to come up with local solutions, then we'll have more 40B projects, which I don't think anyone thinks is the most desirable way to develop housing in this district. But it's there because the local communities are having a hard time meeting 10% as a threshold for affordable housing. As a realtor, I also see that there are some towns that do a better job of simply having housing that in fact is affordable, even if it's not designated affordable housing with a deed restriction. And I hope that when we look at where we want to build affordable housing, we take that housing stock into account and look at where can people afford to live, where can people not afford to live, and how do we get affordable housing into the communities where people can't afford to live. I'd like to see more regional initiatives around this, because housing is not just one community or another. People have to live throughout all 6 towns and the surrounding areas. And then beyond that, we have to look at transportation in connection with housing. It's fine to build housing or to have shelters, but when we don't have public transportation that services those locations, it becomes very difficult for people to turn housing into a productive life where they can also get jobs, get to the store. I was down in Bourne, and there was a story where where the person I was talking to had given someone a ride home from the grocery store, and it was someone who was staying at a transitional housing shelter. And there was no way on the weekend, because the public transit doesn't run on the weekends, there was no way with public transportation to get from the store to the place where they were being helped with housing.
Wow.
So when we look at housing, I don't think we can separate that from regional transportation, which is a big issue in our area.
Okay, excellent. 4th question. What do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most current concerns that you will be addressing?
My main issue, one of my top 3 priorities, is mental health and substance abuse. The CDC has said for the last 3 of the last 4 years that our average life expectancy is going down in this country, because life expectancy for everyone is going down because of suicides, overdoses, and cirrhosis. Last year it ticked up slightly, still not to where it was, but it ticked up slightly because we've made a little bit of progress on the opiates. But suicides were up. So we're clearly not really meeting the mental health needs and the behavioral health needs of our country or our state. Senator Spilka is doing a good job right now of getting out there and trying to reduce some of the stigma and to push for more parity, true parity, between behavioral health and other medical health. I hesitate to differentiate medical and behavioral because a lot of behavioral health issues are medical. Right. And when we differentiate and draw that distinction, we can perpetuate stigmas, we can perpetuate silos in funding. We also are seeing some really good work happening here on the South Shore with some work between the police, the social workers. They're going out, they've done a great job, particularly with opiate and overdoses, of going out the day after an overdose to meet with a plainclothes police officer and a social worker to try to provide services. That it's not just about enforcement, it's not just about bringing down a hammer, but it's about trying to get people help. But we still don't have enough behavioral health providers. I talked to a friend of mine who works in one of the emergency rooms and sees that people come in with a dual diagnosis. 52% of those people who are seeking treatment for substance abuse have an identified mental illness.
Oh.
And they're called dual diagnosis patients, at least 50%. They'll sit in the ER sometimes for a period of time because there are not enough facilities to go to, right? So you have people who are being warehoused when they're at a crisis point. And we need to do better. That's one of the things on the agenda for the state Senate president I've seen in her recent bill. We also need to look at how our funding sources create silos so that Department of Public Health funds certain services, Department of Mental Health funds others. How much are they talking to each other at the state level and interacting and integrating services? And then how much are private insurance companies paying for behavioral health? And how do we simplify the process of people getting on and requiring behavioral health specialists to get on insurance panels so that people can afford to pay for behavioral health?
Interesting. Okay, and for the last remaining minutes, please take time to cover something we have not discussed or an area that you want to expand upon that we've already covered.
So I sit here and I have, I have a lot of things I've done in my life. I've been a social worker, I've been a lawyer, I've been a realtor, I have worked in international business, I've worked with local businesses and small businesses, I've worked with the coastal engineering firm. So I have these capabilities, right? I've worked on local elections, and I've worked on local elections for many years. I've worked in democratic politics for many years. I've worked at the community level to establish a cable TV station in Whitman and Hanson. I've worked on pond studies. I've worked on a lot of things. So what I want to talk about right now is, why am I running? Like, I've done this work for 16 years or more. Law school did this work. Why now? Mm-hmm. And I think the why now is Donald Trump in 2016. It really shifted things for me. It shifted my belief that as a progressive Democrat, I need to stand up. I need to be brave. I think we need to be brave, and not simply hushed tones talking about being progressive. We need to be out there and be bolder about creating a vision that people can get behind at the local level, not just at the national level, to say, what is our lens? How are we looking at things? How are we bringing attention to issues? For me, it's also about my son. He's 12 years old. I spent 5 years of infertility treatment, a lot of heartbreaks, a lot of difficult times to have my son, and he's my joy, he's my world. And what I realized is that my parents, who really grew up with nothing, gave us a better life than they had. I'm concerned that my son and his friends aren't going to have a better life than I had. And if we don't step up and really work hard to make changes now, I look around me at the wage inequality and the wealth inequality in this country. That's a top issue for me, even though it's not an easy one to talk about. We have a middle class that can't afford to pay for housing, can't afford to pay more taxes, can't afford to pay for education, can't always get the health care they need. They're feeling squeezed. Meanwhile, we have an increasing wealth gap where the people who are benefiting the most from our economic system and from the infrastructure we all pay for are paying less on a percentage basis of what they make. I'm advocating for the Fair Share Amendment. I'm advocating for policies that will help to reduce that. I'm also running because my son tells me that he's growing up in this playground. He comes in the other day and says, Mom, Pembroke's like a big campground. We have trails and we have ponds and we have all these things I can do. It feels like I'm in a campground. And I sit there and think, I don't have the heart to tell him that if we don't make really serious changes about our impact on climate change and how we protect our watersheds locally, he and his kids aren't going to have the same opportunities in the same communities we have now. I don't want to tell him that we were too scared or too short-sighted or too selfish to make serious, significant changes today. So I'm running to try to do better, to see if we can do better, to take my experiences to the State House and my voice to our district and tell ourselves that we can do better.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been an interview with Becky Coletta, a Democrat from Pembroke, who's running for the Barnstable and Plymouth County Senate seat. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julie.
PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. And today we're very happy to have John Mahoney, who is a Democrat from Plymouth. Welcome.
Julie, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's good to be here.
What is your current occupation, sir?
My current occupation is that I'm a member of Local 4. I'm an elevator mechanic. I'm very fortunate to work in the trades, and currently I've been on and off there's a new tower going up adjacent to the Boston Garden. I've been on that job quite often in the last few weeks, so I commute into the city. I'm disappointed with respect to this job because I cannot take the red line in.
Oh.
So it's a 6 to 2 job. So you're leaving Plymouth around 10 minutes of 5 and going in there. I enjoy it. I love it. I'm fortunate to be in the trades. And I would tell anybody that has a grandson or a granddaughter or a son or daughter or a niece or nephew that maybe doesn't know what they want to do in their lives or lacks direction or something to that effect, go into the trades.
Sure.
We obviously have a superlative high school here and a Voc Tech program down at South High. But if they're looking for something to do, going to the trades, even in a recession, people always need an electrician or a plumber.
True. Okay, do you have or have you served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
Sure. I moved to Plymouth in '98, and in the early 2000s, I was very active for 4 years in Plymouth Babe Ruth baseball. Helped coach a team for 4 years, and I was the vice president of the league for a couple of years. And then around 2004, 2005, I got elected to town meeting. Precinct 3, I did that for a couple of years and then got appointed to Finance and Advisory Board. The moderator, in his infinite wisdom, thought that I would make a good selection, and I agreed with him. And we went to FinCom, and then I was fortunate enough to get elected to the Plymouth Select Board in '08. So I've been on the Select Board for almost 12 years now, the last 12 years, 4 terms.
Okay.
Love it.
And where can your constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
So obviously the dominant social media platform, I guess nowadays, is Facebook. There's a Twitter profile, but Facebook, John Mahoney for State Senate, I guess. And then the website is mahoneyforstatesenate.org.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to start asking, I'm going to start with the 5 questions, and we'll start with the first. Given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
So I have a pretty decent base knowledge of the 6 communities. I worked on the Cape in the 90s, have a pretty good baseline of Bourne, Sandwich, and Falmouth. I lived in Pembroke for 30 years prior to moving into Plymouth in '98. Matter of fact, I ran for the Select Board in Pembroke in 1988 when I was 20. I didn't win, but it was a wonderful experience. So I pretty much come into this with a baseline of what these communities need. And what's going on here is whoever wins this race, you're going to get sworn in the first, second week of April. You're going right into the budgetary process. So, I bring a certain level of energy to the position, or I will. Obviously, I think the people that know me in Plymouth know I do that with respect to the Select Board. And, we're going to have to go in there and roll our sleeves up. And you're competing. This population of 170 to 180,000 people currently has no representation in the Senate. So it's not the budgetary process. You've got to go up there and you've got to compete for money. And that's primarily what you're doing. Right? So I think the core of what we're doing is you're trying to bring tax dollars back to the district for infrastructure projects. And then specifically, obviously, if I were to, pull this off, you're going to set up meetings initially with the 5 other town managers and boards of selectmen and sit down with them and see exactly what their needs are. And I have a good baseline of what's going on here in Plymouth, but you gotta get, what are their needs and what do they need from me? And get up there. Do they have any home rule petitions going on that need to be carried through committee and get through, and enacted basically as law up there? What are the individual? But the core issues are the same. Infrastructure needs. You see what's going on. The preeminent example of infrastructure in the district is the 2 bridges in the canal. So we're 5 to 6 years away from that, but that's huge. Economic driver. So they're approaching 90 years old and they have to be replaced. Yeah. But I'm up to the task.
Okay. Question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change? And how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding the same topic?
So one of the most significant things this community did was in 2012, and this was and even though the Board of Select Persons is a nonpartisan board, this was a bipartisan endeavor which was done across both aisles, and we created the Division of Marine and Environmental Affairs. That was in 2012. So that was before this had really gained momentum as far as this issue has moved on, especially at the national level. So we've done some significant things. Prior to getting involved, we removed the first dam in 2002 on the coast of Massachusetts, on Town Brook. So we are the leader in New England, at least, in dam removal projects. We were way out ahead of this, and you know, you've got to give David Gould and the staff at the DPW, due credit for that. So if you look at that dam coming out in '02, permitting, design, and engineering had to be done in '99 to 2000. It was 20 years ago. So we created that, basically a standalone environmental division. There is one department head and 5 to 6 employees underneath that individual. It is dam removal projects. It was an honor for me on birthday of last year of 19 to speak with Charlie Baker at the Holmes Dam rededication in April of 19. So that was a $6.8 million project where the town picked up $3.6 million. So the town was on the hook for new Field Street, new bridge, new water, new sewer. The state and the feds, $3.2 million. Removal of the dam, restoration of the upstream, which was probably almost half a mile up to the Boy Scout Bridge. So those projects are vital. They create jobs. Instead of ignoring infrastructure and watching it deteriorate over the course of decades, you're investing in public safety, in increased property values. And obviously, I don't want to pay people to drive fish around in trucks. Okay? And that's what we do when we ignore infrastructure like that. I have better things to do. I want to invest in those projects. We probably lead Massachusetts, if that, of strategic retreat from the coast. Obviously, we've removed a couple of structures from Long Beach. We've removed at least 3 from Whitehorse Beach. And, I don't want to keep wasting tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to invest in infrastructure in areas where it shouldn't be. Whether or not global warming is coming or not, okay, you look at some of the houses on Whitehorse Beach and other areas of Massachusetts, those houses shouldn't be there. If you take those out of play, you're breaking that cycle of destroyed during a northeaster, tax dollars are wasted, federal and state dollars are wasted, insurance money is wasted. Rebuild, destroy, rebuild, destroy.
Okay, got it. All right, question number 3. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and a limited affordable option for them, workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here, and affordable housing in general for renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them?
So this has become a cliche. Every year you must have dozens, if not, 5 to 10 candidates in this arena here to talk about quote-unquote affordable housing. But where does quote-unquote affordable housing exist, and when are we going to solve that problem? Okay? Nobody actually dials into the variables that encompass affordable housing. So in the 1930s, a group of men from Massachusetts went out and they put the horse in front of the cart. They told 4,000 people in Central Mass, you don't live here anymore. We're going to create a reliable, redundant source of water in perpetuity for Boston and the 128 belt. There are no water issues in Boston and the 128. Even if the Quabbin tomorrow stopped regenerating, there's 5 years worth of water there. They're mitigating risk. They built redundancy into a system. Clean source of water, public health, public safety, affordable housing, and economic development. We don't do that here in Plymouth. We don't do that in a lot of communities. The case study that we have to learn from is Brockton. So nobody talks about water. And we're to the point now where we just had a 300-page report from environmental partners. We need 3 new wells online within a decade. We have 1 coming on this year, it's Forges Field. Where are the other 2 going? We need to conserve and we need to secure land for future well sites. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have a community. And nobody is discussing that. 2.
So you're saying that comes before the housing?
Yes.
You have to have it before.
We're in a situation now. We don't have enough in West Plymouth. It's not good. During the drought of 2016, one of our wells went down to nothing. And what happened was I asked, so we currently have 2 6-well systems. And what happens is one well gets low, they take surplus water from the other 5 and they move it over to that one to balance the system. The inability to do that was there in 2016 during the drought. So I asked a town employee, I said, what did you do when that occurred? And what I was told was there was nothing that we could do. We crossed our fingers and hoped that the public didn't figure it out. So you're not going to the Quabbin because the closest community to the Quabbin is Stoughton. It's Stoughton, Holbrook, and Randolph. So they're not going to allow you to bypass Brockton and all the in-between towns to go to Plymouth. And how much is it going to cost to build a pipe from here to Stoughton? $1 billion? You're not going to go to Silver Lake. Silver Lake 60 years ago, because Brockton had the political muscle, was given complete control to the city of Brockton. So you're either going to the ocean, or you need to find land for future well sites to invest in the infrastructure to get the water out of the system, out of the aquifer, and you need severe conservation measures. And if you don't do that, so I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. Everything I do is I want to think long term, and you want to set the future up with an endowment, and a positive financial legacy, instead of just heaping debt upon debt on them.
All right, we'll have to move on to.
And obviously, we needed more time for that question.
Right. Well, you can follow up at the end. Number 4, what do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
So, obviously, the opioid crisis is probably first and foremost. This was, if you had asked me 6 to 10 years ago, I would have told you that the number one issue was certainly the nuclear power plant, safety commissioning, because obviously if there was a major issue over there, that is catastrophic and would cost us billions. But probably 70 years ago, the opioid issue, I think, is up there with the safety commissioning of the plant. Those are the top two issues, in my opinion, side by side. So the Board of Selectmen, I think in the fall of 2013, we went into an executive session and we came out unanimously, once again, a bipartisan decision to go to town meeting and ask for 9 incremental police officers. So Plymouth's police force had stagnated at 100 bodies, I believe, from 97 to 13. So even though we probably added anywhere from 9 to 14,000 people in population, the Plymouth Police Department was doing more with less. So we went to, I believe it was October of 13, we asked for 9 to create a street crimes unit to give Chief Botteri and the captains the man and women power that they need to tackle this issue on the streets. In theory, not going after the addicts, but going after the individuals they were dealing with. Obviously, we have a pretty strong community hospital here in the formerly known as Jordan Hospital, where I was born, by the way. So, and having that education and outreach out there, we've also done whatever we could with respect to when the children in the community are most vulnerable. And that was once they get out of school in the afternoon, anywhere from that 2:30 or 3 o'clock to 5 to 6 in the evening range. And I do know that certainly my colleague Cavaco, very involved in the Manamate Youth Center down on Bartlett, keeping that open, investing in playgrounds and programs after school with respect to the recreation department in Barry de Blasio, and giving these children opportunities in that 3 to 4 hour window to keep them occupied. So at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest issues that's not addressed is the fact that this material wasn't available 25 to 30 years ago. I don't know where it came from. And the large pharmaceuticals don't really give a damn about us. It's all about making money. And the impact that this has had on the communities, the state, and the nation is just, it's irreparable. And I wish that some of this stuff was not allowed to even exist.
But it does.
It does.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to your time. So for the last remaining minutes, which is going to be about 3.5, please take time to cover something that we have not discussed or an area that you want to expand upon that we have already covered.
So we're going to go back to affordable housing, and it's a very complicated topic. So first and foremost, you need a redundant long-term source of fresh water. Do you have that right now? You don't have that. And let's not pretend like you have it, because you don't. So number 2, tax policy. The general fund, and I watched your show last night. I don't know where you taped that with the finance director. You had a 14-minute talk with the finance director last night about the meals tax.
Last week we did,
Right. Okay, so I watched that last night, and that was excellent. I wish I was here. You should have called me in for that one. So the general fund is basically it's a 1 year at a time approach. It doesn't work. None of us do that in our own lives, in our households, the way we were brought up, in our education. Everything we do with the US dollar is to think long term. A properly funded infrastructure fund outside of the general fund would provide us with the opportunity to invest in infrastructure proactively over the course of the next 30 to 50 years and prevent property taxes from going up billions. So that is a factor in taxation, because right now, everything you do with respect to infrastructure is to make it as expensive as possible. When you bond over 15 years, you're paying back $1.50 on average for a dollar you borrow. And if you're bonding over 30 years, you're paying back $1.80 to $2 for every dollar that you borrow. You don't have to raise property taxes. So the single greatest example of that today in New England is Plymouth Town Hall. Did you diversify the tax base? No. Did you expand the tax base? No. Did you raise property taxes on anyone? No. Did you need one more person to move to this community so that you had to tell them that you were going to overtax them? No. That's why. So that's probably, I'll back off that statement if somebody provides me with a superior example. So far, nobody's been able to do that. And then, with respect to affordable housing, you got to go to the legislation that's been passed in the history of Massachusetts. In 1969, 40B was passed, and it's quote-unquote affordable housing. It does anything but that. It doesn't do that. So I think between 2006 and 2008, the former Inspector General for the Commonwealth, Greg Sullivan, did a report, an analysis of all the projects that have been passed under 40B, and he called it probably the most corrupt piece of legislation ever passed in Massachusetts history, and I have no problem backing that up. It does anything but provide you with affordable housing. I was on the doors last Thursday in Falmouth. I'm in a residential neighborhood. They're complaining about 40B project going in down the street. In Pembroke, in Plymouth, these put an undue burden on the community. So you talked about earlier, you mentioned senior citizens downsizing. Senior citizens downsize?
Yep.
They go into mobile homes?
Yep.
Under 40B, mobile homes do not qualify as an affordable housing unit. But yet there's tens of thousands of them in southeastern Massachusetts. That's wrong and that's hypocritical. We need to go back to formula on that statute.
Okay.
So.
All right. John Mahoney.
Thanks, Julie, for having me. I wish we had more time.
Yeah, well, we gave everybody the same amount of time.
If you have me in here next time with a dry erase board, I'll show you how everything works financially.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank John Mahoney, who's a Democratic candidate for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat, who is a resident of Plymouth. Thank you.
My pleasure.
PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. And I am pleased to welcome Jay McMahon, a Republican from Bourne. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. A couple questions before we get started. What is your current occupation?
I'm a self-employed attorney. Been doing it for over 30 years. I've had thousands of cases. A lot of them local. A lot of the people that I've represented well within this district, and I've been a trial lawyer, and I do just about everything that requires a trial: wills and trusts, domestic relations. I do some criminal cases. I won't do things like drug smuggling and stuff like that, or murder cases, but I do things where there's reasonable doubt and we can show it. So that's basically it. I've represented the underdog in many cases and have come out on top. So I feel that my background has really helped me and prepared me for this job here as a state senator.
Okay. And do you have or have you served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
I have. I've mostly in the town of Bourne, but also in the town of Sandwich. Years and years ago, I lived in Sandwich, and I was put on a blue ribbon committee. That's what they called it back then. There was some problems going on in a Board of Health visiting nurse organization type thing in the town, and they needed to have some people from outside to come in and listen and give some recommendations and clear it up. So I was on that, and most recently in Bourne, I was a member of the Bourne Financial Development Corporation. Basically what we're looking to do for Bourne is we're trying to bring in green businesses. And we've got some areas in Bourne where we want to develop for that, because we're looking to create jobs in Bourne for our future people coming out of high school. And we have an eye on green productions and green businesses and stuff like that, and we've been working hard at it, and that's succeeding. And the only reason why I'm not a member of that board right now is because it requires a lot of time. And I ran for Attorney General, as you know, and there's certain things that you can't have, certain conflicts that you can't have when you're running for public office. So I had to resign from that, but I really enjoyed it. I was on it for, I'd say 8 to 10 years.
Okay, wow. And where can constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
You can go to my website. It's www.attorney, you spell it all out, ATTORNEYJ, JAY, McMahon, MCMAHON.com. And I encourage you to go there so that you can learn more of where I am on the positions. You will see there that I'm not wishy-washy on the positions. I mean, they're pretty clear. You'll know after you go to my website, or if you want to go to my Facebook page at J for State Senate, JAY with the number 4, State Senate, on my Facebook page. You go there and you'll see my positions are pretty clear-cut, and there's reasons behind them why I take those stands.
All righty. So now we're going to get right into the questions.
Okay.
Okay, question number 1. Given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
Well, thank you, Julie, for that question. I'm already doing it. As you know, the state committee had a public hearing forum at the State House for the so-called Safe Communities Act. You remember that? I went up there, and I think a lot of people, maybe a lot of our viewers, also went up to attend and give their voice. The Safe Communities Act is anything but safe, and my position was to oppose that. This is an act which would literally hamstring law enforcement. Now, it's supposed to be like a sympathetic act for people who are in our state illegally, that is, illegal immigrants. But this law, or this proposed act, does not help not one United States citizen, not one taxpayer in the Commonwealth, and not one constituent who voted for these legislators who are trying to pass this bill and throw on us something that I find is disgraceful to law enforcement. It hamstrings law enforcement. It compels law enforcement that they cannot ask certain people about their immigration status. It doesn't make any difference what kind of catastrophe may have occurred, like it would hamstring the police. Like, for instance, in 2013 when we had the Boston Marathon bombing. It would hamstring them. So I went up there as a citizen because I knew about the act, I read the act, and it actually gives extra rights to illegal aliens. And I thought it was a terrible bill for the people who are in the Plymouth and Barnstable district. So I went up there to oppose that. And I had plenty of reasons to oppose it, but I'll tell you what. I got my name on the list at 9 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, they stopped the hearings. They never called me. I won't say or speculate as to why they didn't call me, but there were more than 100 people there that still wanted to testify that never got the chance to oppose the passage of that bill.
Okay. Question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change, and how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding that same topic?
Well, I'll tell you what, climate change, I'm like anybody else. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I have children and grandchildren in this district. Lived here all my life. I want the environment, I want to be able to pass off to the next generation a cleaner and safe environment. So I'm all in favor of that. What I am totally against are schemes that are labeled the Transportation Climate Initiative and other schemes like that, where they will raise and jack your taxes up twice as much, and there is no scale or measurement as to how these schemes are progressing, whether they are achieving any goal. In fact, there are no goals. So I'm against those tax-raising schemes, and I will fight them. I will fight them on the behalf of the people of the Plymouth and Barnstable district. But let me say this. I'm an attorney, and I work on environmental issues. I have worked in the permitting process, which is sometimes, in some cases, outrageous, with people, if you want to put a deck on your house, you can't do it, or there's so many hoops and appeals you have to file to do it. And I am more in favor of releasing and doing away with some of those regulations that won't allow people to improve their homes, for which to me is always counterproductive to the incentive of taxes. If you want to talk about real estate taxes, why not let people improve their premises? But getting back to the environment in general, we have plenty of laws on the books right now. And what I would look at is seeing, do we need funding for the Department of Environmental Protection? Do we need inspectors to look around? Because we don't need another environmental law. There's already a ton of things that cannot be done in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What we need is inspectors who can go and inspect certain places when the Board of Health, because we want to encourage people, you see somebody polluting a river, a stream, you want to call the Board of Health, let them go down and drop a dime to the state and have inspectors come down and prosecute that. When I ran for Attorney General, that was going to be one of my programs. Because, folks, there's plenty of laws already. When people tell you they're going to pass a law for this or that to protect the climate, we've got tons of laws that are not being enforced. And that is the direction I would take us. And I would have that process through the budgetary process. In other words, I can ask the Attorney General, what are you doing about cleaning up pollution instead of these 50, 60 lawsuits against the Trump administration? I want to know, why are you focusing on political activity when really you should be doing cleanup activity, because they have a division with the Attorney General's office to do that.
Okay. Question number 3. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and limited affordable options, workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here, and affordable housing in general for renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them?
Oh, here's my direct plan. Folks, you need to know that we don't have a money problem on Beacon Hill. We have a spending problem. Right now, currently this year, we have a surplus of $1 billion. We had the same last year, a $1 billion surplus. And yet they're still coming up with ideas of how to tax us and to tax your wallet, take more money from you. I'll talk about that in a moment, but it dovetails into this. We do have a housing problem, but not if you're an illegal immigrant. You go right to the top of the list. I have a severe problem with that we are giving $1.8 billion of our tax, state money, not federal money, state money. $1.8 billion are going to housing, education, and welfare for illegal aliens in our state right now. Now, that means they get to the top of the list. And the people who they're ahead of, veterans, seniors, and the elderly. And I'm against that completely. I'm going to change that structure. I'm going to start letting the priorities be for our elderly, for our seniors who have been paying in all their lives, been paying state withholding taxes, Social Security and Medicare, all that. Now, I know that some of that's on the federal side, but also on the state side. I'm going to make sure that they are our priorities. I'm going to make sure that veterans become our priorities. And I'm going to take a lot of that $1.8 billion that we are giving to illegal aliens and start applying it to the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And then what will happen is we will stop being the magnet for illegal aliens, and we will start using the funds for the people who have put their heart and soul into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay. Question number 4. What do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
Okay, one of the biggest problems we have right now, I campaigned heavily on this when I ran for Attorney General, and I'm campaigning heavily on it now. It is my number one issue, and that is the opioid crisis that we're facing right now. Now, look, folks, it goes like this. We are progressively having more people die each year in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We are now over 2,000. It started about 5 years ago when it was 1,500 people. They were saying, well, it's 1,500, it's manageable, we'll do something about it. Then it went to 16, then 17, then 19, then 2,000, then 21, and then 22,000 people. Now, folks, this isn't just numbers that are going up a little bit. These are more people dying every year. In other words, there were 1,500 dying, then there was 1,600 more, then 1,900 more, then 2,000 more, and then there was a little drop. It went from 2,100 back down to 2,000, and everybody in state government took a bow and a clap and applause that, hey, we're tackling the problem. No, they're not. That was just Narcan. Narcan was given out to all our first responders, and Narcan, I'm glad they did. And I would gladly fund Narcan, because what that does is it gives the addict who almost passed onto the Great Divide, it gives them another chance to get into effective rehabilitation. And that's the deal, Julie. Effective rehabilitation. It goes like this. I learned a lot when I ran for Attorney General. Government rehabilitation programs are a failure. By and large, they're a failure. You will find every once in a while somebody that made it through. But the statistics are appalling. The government programs are more than a 95% failure. However, private pay programs, if you can afford it, private pay programs, because insurance doesn't cover the extensive remedies and rehabilitation that's required. But private pay programs have an 87% success rate. Now you might say, wait a minute, 87%, because I'm a lawyer, that's the question I asked my experts. I said, how can you be so sure with a number like 87%? I could see if you said better than 50, better than 90. They said 87. They said, because we track them. We track all our people. We track everybody as they go through the program. 87% are clean and healed from opiate addiction one time through the program. I know people have gone through the government programs 30 times and still failing, still standing in the mile-long methadone line, trying to get clean of opiates. Now, the key is this. The private pay programs are successful, and we should develop our government programs around private pay one time through and be successful.
Okay. And for the remaining 4 minutes or so, can you use that time to cover something we haven't discussed or an area that you want to expand upon that we've already covered?
Okay. Folks, this is the deal. This is the Plymouth and Barnstable district. So we got 6 towns. We got Pembroke, we got Kingston, and we got Plymouth. And then we got 3 towns in Barnstable County. We got my town of Bourne, town of Sandwich, and Falmouth, all the way down to Woods Hole. So it's a long, narrow territory, if you will. However, there is a lot in common with both of these counties. Barnstable County, of course, is Cape Cod. Plymouth, the bulk of the population is in the town of Plymouth. We all have one thing in common, that's tourism. Cape Cod and Plymouth are points of destination. People don't pass through. They come here because they love our place. They love everything, the historic areas in Plymouth, which is America's hometown. They love Cape Cod, and I've got the main section, the Upper Cape area that I'm representing. Tourism is important. Now, this legislature, and I can come out boldly and say they don't care about us. And the reason why they don't, they passed an Airbnb tax. And I know you know what Airbnb is. It's people who have apartments or rooms that they rent during the summertime to college kids who are working in our summer and seasonal industries. Beacon Hill passed a tax against them. Now, there used to be 4,000 B&Bs on Cape Cod alone. Did you know that? 4,000. But with all the regulations that are required now and all the taxes that are required, that number has dwindled down to only 10% of what it was. In other words, they're at 400 right now. That's crazy. I'm going to put an end to that. I am going to do everything I can to repeal the Airbnb tax. Sanctuary state, not for me, not in Massachusetts. I've seen too many bad things go down. This country is very welcoming. You want to come to America from another country, you can do it on a tourist visa, you can do it on a student visa, a work visa, green card, if you will. This country is very welcoming. But when you sneak in, that's another problem. Because when you do it legally, we know who you are, we know where you are, and we know why you're here. When you sneak in, I'm very leery of why you snuck in. Why did you come in the wrong way? What was your motive? Where are you and what you are doing? We know that there are ISIS cells, isolated and silent cells throughout the United States. We have seen people who have come in here and taken advantage from other countries. For instance, I could just point to the 2013 Boston Marathon. That was egregious, and there are many people underneath our society who have caused major crimes. On Cape Cod alone last year, 102 illegal immigrants committed some of the most atrocious crimes, sexual crimes, violent crimes, and they were deported. And they were here illegally. We cannot have that. So I am a firm supporter of public safety. I am against any taxes that are going to make life difficult for you. I am against the gas tax. I'm against TCI. Anything that's going to dip into your wallet further than it is now, I am against, and I want to repeal some taxes even on that. So let me just end with this. I thank you so much for listening to this program. I thank you for all that you've done. Check out my website and Facebook page. Thank you.
And we thank Jay McMahon, who's a Republican from Bourne and a candidate for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. It was fun to be here. It was excellent.
We'll see you next time. PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. We're pleased to welcome Thomas Moakley, a Democrat from Falmouth. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. What is your current occupation?
I'm an employee in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and while I've been working there full-time in the Major Felony Bureau, I've been putting myself through the evening program at Suffolk Law School.
Okay. Do you have or have you served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
I'm not currently serving on any elected boards or anything like that. I worked in the office of Congressman Jim McGovern as well as State Representative Tim Madden. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I was also the student representative on the Falmouth School Committee back in the day, and the inaugural recipient of the Thelma Goldstein Scholarship from the Falmouth Democrats. I'm no stranger to being the youngest person in the room. My great-uncle Joe Moakley was a congressman from Boston, and he was first elected to the state legislature at 25, which is the same age I am. I'm not currently serving on any boards.
Okay, no problem. And where can constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
Well, we've got a website, thomasmoakley.com, and we've also got social media pages, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. If you just search my name, Thomas Moakley, it should come right up.
Okay. We're going to start with some questions. Number one, given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
Well, I think it's important, Julie, to make sure that we rely on our experts. I mean, one of the things that has come up constantly over the course of my campaign, especially when we're talking about the issues that are most important to me and that are disproportionately affecting young people, like climate change and the opioid epidemic, is that you see a lot of the time that scientists and experts aren't being elevated to the station that they deserve. And because these are a lot of the people who spend their days and nights working on these issues. They know what has worked and what hasn't worked. And as far as the state house goes, I think we're blessed to have a lot of people in state government who really care about the future. And that's regardless of what letter comes after their name on the ballot. I think what's more important is the character of the person whose name it is. So I want to follow in the footsteps of people like Tip O'Neill and my Uncle Joe Moakley, who realized that the most important tool in the legislator's toolbox is credit. And if you're willing to give up credit, you can get anything done. So if I'm elected, I'm going to be a senator for my whole district. And that means I'm going to have an open door policy for anybody who wants to come in, tell me about what's bothering them, what's important to them, what they think I can do for them. I always want to be of service to everyone. I've never wanted to do anything other than public service. And when this opportunity came up, I jumped in with both feet because I love my community and I always wanted to serve.
The individual towns that you'll be serving, how do you get up to speed with each of them? What's the issues, the current issues and topics that are important to people in those towns?
Well, knocking on doors every day across the district, you hear about a lot of the unique issues that are affecting each town. And also the fact that, again, we are blessed to be in a part of the state that has such active participation in government. And then that's what's really inspired me to get involved myself. So, I mean, I'm going to be the kind of senator who's calling up, a selectman or a planning board member before a meeting and say, okay, well, give me a little bit of a background on these issues. Let's see what's really going on here. What's the history of this issue? And, have there been similar projects elsewhere in the state that have worked out or that haven't worked out? And you hear from a lot of people about the issues that are affecting their towns. But a lot of times you also hear how what the whole district is concerned about. And those are things like climate change. There's things like the opioid epidemic and affordable housing.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go on to your second question. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change? And how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding the same topic?
Well, it may sound dramatic, but it's true. The fact that for my generation, climate change is an existential issue. It's a security threat, it's an economic threat, and it's something that we need to be extremely proactive about combating. And we can do that through two prongs. We can do that through mitigation, which is discussing where does our energy come from? How can we make sure that we're heading towards a carbon neutral future at as quickly a rate as we possibly can? Massachusetts has been a leader on so many different things when it comes to gay rights, when it comes to health care. And this is another area where we can lead the country and hopefully the country can lead the world because it requires a community action. On Cape Cod, the Boston Globe ran a really fantastic feature called On the Edge of a Warming World, about how Cape Cod is already seeing the impacts of climate change. And many places on the South Shore have as well. So in our area, we see it already happening, already affecting people's lives in a very personal way. So in our district, climate resiliency is also going to be a major prong of our future in combating climate change. And that means that we have to build into our building codes and be thinking 50, 100 years ahead whenever we build new infrastructure or updating old infrastructure. Because that's simply the fact about the future, is that this area is going to be getting warmer and wetter as time is going on. Sea level is rising at a rate of about 1 inch per 10 years. And so there's no magic bullet solution. We need to be thinking about all these things moving forward and elevating our experts so that we understand the best way to combat it.
Do you think that it's easy to dovetail with the state, what they're doing, or is our district in our area different because in a lot of ways we're a coastal community?
Right. I think we can be working with the state in a lot of ways, especially when we talk about where our energy comes from. We need to prevent the sunset dates for our renewable energy portfolio. Massachusetts currently produces the highest per capita amount of solar in the country, which is something to be proud of, but something we don't want to lose because it's going to be important that things like solar and other renewables are part of our energy portfolio going forward. When it comes to climate resiliency and mitigation, that's something that needs to be focused on the coast because those are the people who are feeling it most strongly. So as a senator, I'm going to be an advocate for my district and for everyone along the coastlines, especially who are being affected already by climate change, whose insurance premiums are going way up and who have to think about, is it worth it to rebuild this particular seawall next year, or do we have to be thinking about alternatives?
Okay, great. So your third question. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors want to downsize and limited affordable options. Workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here. And affordable housing in general, whether it's renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them?
I think we need to reassess the 40B laws in Massachusetts because they apply a sort of uniform approach that I don't think works for the entire Commonwealth. We need a sort of bottom-up approach that comes from the community's perspective. What works for a particular community and what are their needs as well? Because this is something that's not only affecting young people, but as you mentioned, it affects a lot of seniors as well. And affordable housing is something that is directly tied to transportation. In our area, other than the commuter rail station, there is not very much public transportation. And I think that's something that we need to invest in as a state. It's not only good for the environment, but it's important for workforce and for people who may not be able to get a job and live in the same town. Mm-hmm. So transportation is directly tied to opportunity. So if we have people who are working full-time, they should be able to stay here. Or if people who are retired and have worked for their whole lives, they should be able to stay here. We need to think about what kind of community do we want to be. Mm-hmm. And if we're pushing out these members of our community just because of the rapidly rising cost of housing, then we're not really that kind of community that we like to identify ourselves as. These are important issues that require immediate attention, I believe.
And I know there's a lot of young people who grow up in this area that would love to come back and live here, but they can't afford to do so.
Right.
What can we do for them?
I think we can attract innovative jobs around here. If we expanded sort of the broadband coverage, especially around in our district, then we could attract some high-tech businesses and people wouldn't necessarily feel like they have to commute between Boston or Providence or sometimes even farther in a lot of circumstances. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a beautiful place to grow up. I know I grew up here and I've loved it and I've never wanted to live anywhere else. But a lot of people don't have that same opportunity. And that comes back to creating jobs, and that can be part of anything like the blue and green economy. It can be part of something like the Green New Deal, and it can be part of things like attracting innovative businesses to our area that will diversify the economy a little bit, and so make it so we're not so dependent on the tourism industry or the Boston industry to survive.
All right. Excellent. Your fourth question. What do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
There's no question it's the opioid epidemic. I mean, I've lost friends already, and I don't know anyone in our area who hasn't been personally affected by the tragedy. And it's a disease of despair. A lot of people feel like they can't get jobs, like they're sort of stuck in a rut, like they feel lonely. And there's no magic bullet for this issue. It's something that we need to combat from all angles. From a logistical standpoint, I think we need to start regulating the sober homes in Massachusetts. About 70% are unregulated as it is now. And we need to make sure that these facilities are doing what they're actually supposed to be doing. From a healthcare perspective, we need to make sure that we have parity between mental health care and physical health care. Because what's happening for people who don't have good health care, they can't find the facilities that they need if they feel like they're in danger of addiction or one of their loved ones is. Mm-hmm. And for people who do have good health care, a lot of times they can be taken advantage of by facilities who don't have the highest standards of ethics. And that creates another issue for the availability of beds. So another thing is that we need to invest in community mental health clinics. Because you say you cut your finger, you need to go to the emergency room. Mm-hmm. But if you or a loved one, someone you know is in the throes of addiction, or you think they might be in danger to themselves, a lot of people don't know where to go. And even those who do might not be able to get in. Okay. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to combat the opioid crisis. Because, frankly, we just need to prioritize stopping the deaths. Massachusetts has over double the national rate of accidental overdoses related to opiates. And a lot of that is fentanyl coming into the supply. Yeah. Now over 90% of the toxicology reports that were performed on overdoses related to opioid, over 90% of those cases have had fentanyl in them. It's frankly evil. It is.
And what exactly is fentanyl? It is a...
It's essentially something that's laced inside the opiate.
Okay.
Is practically an elephant tranquilizer.
Okay.
It's never something that humans would need to ingest, and it is designed to be addictive.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So in your last 4 minutes or so, please take time to cover something that we either haven't discussed or an area that you want to expand upon that we've already covered, or something personal or anything else you want to talk about.
Well, I would just say that, you know, I jumped into this race in November, right after Senator DiMacedo had made the decision to resign. And even before we knew the date of the election, I've been knocking on doors virtually every day, attending community events, and, you know, and I've been telling people that I'm Thomas Moakley. I'm from Falmouth, an Eagle Scout, a graduate of Georgetown University, been putting myself through the evening program at Suffolk Law School, that I got into this race because I think the issues most important to my community that are also disproportionately affecting young people and have become tragically personal to so many of us, like climate change and the opioid epidemic, that these are serious issues that require urgent action. But nonetheless, I'm optimistic about the future, and I hope that your viewers feel that they can be optimistic about the future and 2020 and beyond. And that's because there's no better day to be born in the United States than today. And tomorrow will be even better. And that's because of the innovations that's constantly being made in all sorts of industries like medicine, education, technology, science. My job, and the job I think of anyone in public office, is to make sure that government catches up. That's the kind of senator that I want to be. And if anybody wants to learn more about me, my email is thomas@thomasmoakley.com. I'm always happy to learn more, and I'm always happy to help anybody that I possibly can.
And what type of attorney do you want to be?
I'm studying environmental law.
Okay.
Although there's no specific specialization in that at Suffolk. I've taken all the courses relating to it, especially regarding hazardous waste cleanups is what I've sort of done my thesis on.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate this.
Thank you.
This has been our interview, our Q&A with Senate candidate Thomas Moakley, a Democrat from Falmouth. PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. And right now we are fortunate to have Susan Moran, a Democrat from Falmouth, joining us on set. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
A couple of questions before we get into the actual questions is, what is your current occupation?
So I am a business lawyer as well as a realtor.
Okay. And do you now or have you ever served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
I have both. When I was a board member of the library, I was asked to run for the Board of Selectmen and did. I spoke to a lot of folks and I chaired that board for a couple of years. I continue to serve on it. I'm also currently the chair of Barnstable County Economic Development, and I hold a legislative position on the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates. I am deputy chair.
Okay. And where can constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
We have a really great website, votemoran.com. It tells you about the candidacy, volunteer opportunities, and the important dates of March 3rd for the primary and the 31st for the election.
Okay, now we're going to start with our questions. Okay? Number one, given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
Well, the important thing that'll be going on is really the budget. So there are many issues to look at in terms of the transportation initiatives that are going on, education initiatives that are going on. There are climate change, crucial initiatives that have already been filed. I intend immediately to join the legislative initiatives on all of those issues. And in fact, I was just at the State House a couple of weeks ago speaking before the board, the legislative committee with respect to Holtec, and really the concerns of folks in Plymouth about downsizing all of the safety requirements of Holtec. So that's something I'm going to be watching and looking at very closely.
And again, Holtec is the company that has taken over
For the decommissioning
Decommissioning.
of the Plymouth nuclear plant, yes, a concern for the entire district, a big concern on both sides of the canal.
And what about the individual towns, the 6 towns that you'll be serving? How are you going to get up to speed with what they're concerned with?
Sure. So a lot of the issues are really the same with respect to the district in terms of the transportation concerns. We've got the bridges. We've got concerns just generally about whether there might be a gas tax. How are we going to pay for this infrastructure improvements that the governor has proposed? That's one issue. We've got issues on education. You know, there's some increased funding, and we want to be sure. In fact, one of the reasons I want to go to the State House is to be sure that the Plymouth Barnstable District gets its fair share on that education funding. So those are two of the primary issues. Senator Sear is taking on an incredibly big initiative with respect to health care and being sure that mental health is part of that. That's something else that I really want to join in and be supportive of.
Okay. Question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change, and how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding that same topic?
So climate change I look at as an emergency. As the chair of the Board of Selectmen, I was the first board that started a climate action committee so that every initiative, whether it's repair of a bridge or any sort of infrastructure, we simultaneously look at what does this mean for the next 30 years, the next 50 years? The entire district is almost entirely shoreline concerned. And so when we look at big climate change issues, that's the problems that I look at. We have a tourism economy. We want to be sure that we protect this infrastructure. But I also want to look ahead, and I also want to look at how we're going to fund this. One of the initiatives that I believe strongly in is the blue and green economy and working at funding these climate change challenges so that they actually create jobs. You know, when you look at the turbines that are being put up off sea, those are engineering jobs. Those are really important jobs that our local colleges can really we can have a relationship with, so the kids don't have to move out of the district in order to have high-paying jobs. It also is a housing production issue. We want to be sure we have housing for everyone. So those are the things that come together when I look at how initiatives can be funded within the project. So the green and blue economy is a terrific opportunity for young people to stay in the district, have jobs, and that lower the taxes because these initiatives are paid for by local businesses.
Can you define the green and blue economy?
Sure. So the green economy would be things like solar development. As a lawyer, I do solar development with landowners, folks that have tree farms or cranberry farms are looking for different alternative uses of their properties. It's a great investment, and it's also great for gas emissions and going forward to keep our earth green. When you look at the blue economy and the fact that we're so coastal, we have ocean turbines that are clean sources of energy, and again, a great opportunity for folks looking for careers to get into that economy and really benefit themselves in the district.
Okay. And we'll go on to question number 3. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and limited affordable options. Workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here. And affordable housing in general, renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them?
When I get to the State House, one of the things I want to look at is having a tax credit for landlords who will rent year-round. Mm-hmm. And so we have a problem all over the district with summer rentals being so expensive as compared with year-round. I think one way to really even out that incredible expense is if we have a statewide program where that landlords who own those properties will be able to better afford year-round rentals at a rate that the average person can afford. We're talking about housing for everyone. We're talking about our neighbors, our teachers, our emergency responders. We want a vibrant community with folks from all employment, hospital employees, the tourism employees. We want to be able to keep those folks here so that we have a sustainable lifestyle going forward. Folks who are 60 and over, a lot of times just really want to downsize, and what in terms of the regional development, we want places where folks can live where it's handy to public transportation. I've been on the board of the Cape Cod Regional Transport Authority, and I understand how important public transportation is. The CCRTA is even looking at school programs so that we have a new generation that is carbon emission sensitive and really looking at alternative forms of transportation. So looking at regional transportation options is another. And when we look at housing going forward, I think at the State House we've got to look at having a 2/3 majority for town meeting. Has one of the things that's made it very tough for us to develop housing that's affordable for everyone in the places that the town wants. So I'm in favor of a good degree of municipal control so that you can have your communities really feel the way they always have, but that they are welcoming to folks who need the housing of all types.
Okay, excellent. And our fourth question. What do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
So for me, it's twofold. It's the cost of health care for everyone, and it really dovetails with the scourge of opioid and other addictions. In my background, my dad was in a wheelchair my whole life, and I know what it's like to really try to get the services that are affordable for veterans. In my history, I'm a breast cancer survivor. I know firsthand the horrifying, scary challenges that people who are facing life and death decisions go through, and I know what that means for their families. Happily, I'm here 20 years later because I could afford good health care. Another parallel, another side of the spectrum is the scourge of opioid addiction. I worked for 5 years inpatient with addictions treatment, and I know how incredibly challenging it is for families. I know how it shakes families. I know how it affects everyone, including employers. And I think there should be, at the State House, I want to look into having programs where employers are supported for keeping jobs open so that folks who are dealing with the scourge of addiction, and it's alcohol as well, those folks can really get into a treatment that's long enough that gives them a chance to really climb out of that. Because what happens when you look at the changes of brain chemistry and the way these chemicals affect your bodies, the research is not comparable where what the insurance companies cover is the same as what you medically need to really climb out of those issues. So those are things I'm headlong committed to solving and to looking at creative legislation at the State House for that to happen.
Do you think the state has done enough in the area of opioids?
Well, I'm buoyed by the fact of there being more attention. Senator Sear is working on a committee that's looking at mental health side of it, but I don't. The short answer is no. I think we have to do more. We can do more. I think businesses are interested in not having the cost of retraining people, not having the cost of losing really good employees who know your business and who are great customer service folks, but who deal with this scourge. It's a healthcare issue, and I think we can do more. This is a solvable problem. It's going to take a lot of funding.
Okay. And for the remaining 5 minutes or so, you can talk about anything you want, something that we've not discussed or an area that you want to expand upon that we've already covered, something personal, whatever you want to chat about.
Oh, thanks. People often ask me, why are you running? And the reason is that, I've worked with the delegation for a long time, having been in the both local and the county legislative government. And that's the kind of close interaction that we need going forward for the Plymouth Barnstable district. But yet we've lost Senator DiMacedo, who I have a long friendship with, and we would often speak about local issues. What I've done over the last 5.5 years is do a lot of problem solving with the district, locally and regionally. And I know a lot of the programs that we've started to work on really require going to the State House for funding, for one thing. And so that's something. I am a litigation attorney, and I am a fierce competitor. I've had a lifetime of challenges, like many people. And when you grow up, the oldest of 5, lower middle class, dad in a wheelchair, he was a great example where he was involved in the community and taught me that one person can make a difference. And so, having the opportunity with folks having supported me and the and what the campaign has done over the past short period, we're moving ahead. People call me the Terry Murray Democrat, and what that means in terms of our candidacy is that as a Democrat, I believe in all of those important issues of serving the public, but the Terry Murray part is really the practical aspect, where I look at how are we going to pay for these things? How are we going to have programs that don't break the back of the middle class? So I look at business solutions to those economical problems. Our candidacy going forward, I'm looking at important things like ocean development, where we can have, for example, farm seaweed, and folks who have families at home can continue to work at home and yet step out and farm even if they have small children. I'm looking at tax credit implications where workers can get a tax credit that might solve commuting problems, where they either telecommute from home and employers can keep those good employees, but it solves our carbon emission issue. It helps with our congestion in traffic. So those are the kinds of problem-solving skills that I've learned as in doing municipal government for 5 years. I'm not a career politician. I was at a library board and I was asked to run, and just from that point on, I had coffee or tea with about 300 people. Whoever I met suggested I meet with someone else, and for me, it's really about public service. My dad was a public servant. My uncle was a public defender. He was a public servant. And my skills as a lawyer and a mediator have made me successful in putting projects together. As for the Board of Selectmen, I started a community and initiative where everyone who's a taxpayer who's involved in a project, town expansion of Route 28, now has the opportunity and to be part of a committee where they get direct access to all the town's experts. And that's something, when you get that kind of, if you have a concern about a project and you get to address that local or municipal official directly, that's where the best solutions come from, and that's the kind of senator I will be.
Okay, thank you so much. We have had our time here with Susan Moran, a Democrat from Falmouth, and you have been watching PACTV's Q&As with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. PACTV is pleased to host this Q&A with the candidates running for the Plymouth and Barnstable County Senate seat. And right now we have on set with us Stephen Michael Palmer, who is a Democrat from Plymouth. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. A couple questions to get out of the way before we ask the big major questions. What is your current occupation?
My current occupation is I'm a night auditor at Mabeau in Pine Hills in Plymouth. And I've worked 7 days a week since my wife has died to pay the bills. 2 kids are in college. One graduated from college, the other one graduated from high school. So I work 7 days a week, and I run the Sheridan and Needham hotel as a night auditor also. I do accounting. I took accounting at BC.
Okay. Do you are you currently or have you in the past served on any boards or committees, either elected or appointed?
I've been both. I was a town meeting member in Braintree, Massachusetts when I was 17 and a half. I was elected at 17 and a half, and I served when I was 18. So I've been young in it. I moved to Plymouth after I got married, etc. We moved out of South Boston, so now I was a school teacher over there for 10 years at St. Augustine's, and I coached the baseball, football, and the basketball for the CYO, etc. So we moved to Plymouth, and I was elected town meeting member. My wife died 7 years ago, so I went back into politics because I was a politician before I met my wife. And my wife said, you either be a politician or marry me, and I married my wife. So this is where I'm at. I'm also a commissioner of redevelopment authority in the town of Plymouth. And I also am a trustee as a appointed position by the redevelopment authority as a member of the charitable housing trust in the town of Plymouth also.
Okay. And where can constituents go to find out more about you and your campaign?
They can go on my website, www.stephenmichaelpalmer.com.
Okay. All right, so we're going to get right into the questions. And the first question I'm going to ask you is this. Given that you will be coming into office midterm, how do you plan to tackle the process of getting up to speed on the myriad of topics and work product already being done in the 6 towns that you will represent?
So there's Pembroke, Kingston, Plymouth, Bourne, Sandwich, and Falmouth. I have gone to those town meetings they had previously a couple of months ago. I've gone to the meetings and campaigned out the front door and gone to the meetings and took the books and seeing what the budget is and see what could be helped and if they need more money and hopefully they won't lay any teachers out in Sandwich, etc. and they need a new community building for Pembroke, etc. Town of Plymouth's a mess. The fact is that my taxes keep going up every year. The town manager makes almost as much as the mayor of New York City. It's in chaos. It's in crisis. The fire department is leaking. They need a new roof. I guess it was approved in 1990 and it never got done. Kicking the can down the road, and it's taxes keep going up. Hundreds of dollars a quarter. So I don't feel that. I think there should be more government watching over these towns that, make a $78 million sewer problem, and it goes back to the taxpayers. Kind of disappointed in it. That's why I'm going back into government. I don't believe in tax and spend. I'm not a liberal. I feel that every dollar, every tax dollar should be going to the constituents or road repair or bridge work or I have boycotted road construction in the town of Plymouth to get it done. It wasn't the best thing to do, but it definitely got done after I protest. And I'm kind of feisty. I'm a maverick in a way, and I feel that this is what you need up at the State House.
And how are you going to get up to speed on what legislation was being worked on?
Oh, I read all the local newspapers, the Globe, the Herald, the Record American. I go online and make sure that I'm abreast with the WBUR, etc. And I go on the website for the State House News, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Okay, so question number 2. What do you think are the priorities within the district regarding climate change, and how do they dovetail into the state's priorities and initiatives regarding the same topic?
First of all, we're not going to solve the climate change now. It's been going on for forever, and now people realize that we have to make some changes. And the fact is that it has to come with money. A lot of money for structural problems. Beach erosion is probably number 1, and it's really going to be a challenge to the climate control. It's kind of like my son today. He's graduated from high school, Plymouth South. Daddy, where's the snow? Daddy, why doesn't it get cold anymore? I don't have that answer. You know, I don't think anyone has that answer. And, you know, Plymouth is running out of water now. So, you know, these things have to be dovetailed and they have to be taken care of, and the draw has to be made. It's just the fact is that the problem is not going to be solved overnight. And, you know, it's going to take studies as well as constituents that, you know, will say no at legislation that isn't going to be right to spend money. You know, it's kind of like the town of Falmouth, you know, built a $5 million windmill and for the power. And it was under Deval Patrick, and they thought it was a grant. And they had to take it down. It took them $5 million to take it down. And now they have to pay for the $5 million that they put up. I mean, these mistakes can't be made in small little towns like this. I mean, they're Norman Rockwell towns. They're beautiful. You know, Falmouth is the Irish Riviera. You know, and I was in Sandwich today, and the fact is, it's a beautiful town. But you know, you have to, constituents have to vote for people that are going to make the right decisions, and you know, be concentrating on their tax dollars, not the tax dollars that are wasted.
Okay. Do you feel that the state is doing enough to study and make recommendations to counteract our
I'm
climate
sure they're
change?
studying it, but the recommendations are, you know, all over the place. We got to pinpoint it and, you know, get to one issue. And, you know, climate change is a big issue. But, you know, I don't have the answer right now. I'd have to study it more.
Okay.
I'm more into other issues.
Okay, fair enough. Question number 3. Currently, there are many challenges regarding housing. Seniors wanting to downsize and limited affordable options, workforce housing for those who work in our area but can't afford to live here, and housing in general for either renters or buyers. Given these challenges, what is your plan to tackle them? Interesting
that you come up with that question, because I'm with the Redevelopment Authority in Plymouth, and we make sure that, you know, any houses developments that are built, 3,000 building permits were pulled in this year, and you know, out of those 3,000, you know, we have hundreds of affordable housing, but affordable housing in Plymouth is $300,000, you know, $350,000. And I made a motion with the charitable trust last meeting to help. The money, I don't know if you know how it works, but if a developer makes 7 houses, he has to have 1 for affordable. It's kind of like Pine Hills. Fact is, when they build, they don't have affordable housing, but they give us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we take those hundreds of thousands of dollars and make sure that it goes to affordable housing. So there was one gentleman that was a veteran, and he applied for the lottery, and the fact was that he needed some money for $15,000 for a down payment. So I made a motion on the board that, you know, we give him the $15,000 as a grant. If he sells the house, he has to pay it back. But you know, these are the things that can help people. But you know, we have to go back to, like, my mother grew up in the projects in South Boston. You know, and it was a good life. My uncle came back from Normandy alive, and she lived there. And you know, I really like to see projects come back to these cities and towns. You know, and the fact is that it can be productive. You know, you can build small townhouses. They have them in, you know, Roxbury. Diane Wilkinson built some nice ones near Franklin Park, and you know, I'd like to see that concept come alive without the, you know, 55 plus in Plymouth, 55 plus in Plymouth, 55 plus seniors in Plymouth. You know, how about the families? You know, where are the families going to go? You know, the school population in Plymouth is going down, but yet the price to run the school budget is over $100 million. You know, it just doesn't make sense. We're going backwards instead of forwards. You know, the government was made to help people, not to take their money and spend it, you know, foolishly. Tax and spend, tax and. I'm not for tax and spend. I'm more of a moderate. I'm not a liberal.
Okay. Our 4th question is, what do you see in the realm of health and human services as the most vital current concerns that you will be addressing?
Well, you know, the fact is that, you know, after my wife died, you know, I realized how much money I'm paying in health care. My wife gave me $80 a week for gas money, and you know, she took care of the bills in the house. And when she died, God rest her soul, I had to take over and realize that, you know, healthcare is a big cost. You know, I've paid thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for healthcare in my family. You know, and I don't even get sick. You know, my children go and there's a co-payment. You know, and you know, a co-payment, and then there's a deductible. I mean, that doesn't make sense. There's got to be other rules backwards. It's kind of like if I get elected for state senate. When I get elected for state senate, I'm supposed to be making $60,000. I'm giving 6% back to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I want to call it reverse taxation. We have to have different ideas, and we have to go different directions instead of just raising taxes and spending tax money. You know, the budget this year is in the insurance companies, $252 billion in you know, cost overrides that, you know, it doesn't go to the patients, it goes to everybody's salary. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I like to go in there and kind of figure it out and say, we're not helping people, we're just taking their money.
So you're saying that your number one concern is affordable health care?
Affordable health care for all.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's just the fact is, should everybody be on Mass Health? It's just the fact is it doesn't help you, you know? I mean, I was laid off and I was making, you know, $500 a week. Now I go for unemployment and they only give me $250, but yet the state legislators are making $18 million raises every year. It doesn't make sense. The government was made for the people, not for the legislators to dictate. And I'm paying their health insurance, and I'm paying their dental, and I'm paying the firemen's dental, and I'm paying the firemen's, you know, and the town employees. I mean, come on, guys, kick in a little, will you? I mean, why take it out of my pocket?
Okay. And our final question, and then you're going to get to use your remaining time to answer this. For the last remaining minutes, please take time to cover something we have not discussed or an area that you wish to expand upon that we've already covered. So you have about 5 minutes.
So the fact is, the government was started. This Massachusetts government was started with John Hancock, Adam, and Revere. Okay, and they taxation without representation. You know, now they've made and that was a democracy. They made a mockery and a demockery out of my democracy. They're taking money and they're spending it foolishly. You know, the budget's going to go up another $1 billion. You know, it goes down to the towns. The towns tax a couple of $100 more a year, and now the towns go up, and you know they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you go to the state, and they're spending billions, and now the government's selling trillions. You know, the trillions of dollars that, you know, it went up $1 trillion under the Trump administration already. You know, that's money we're not going to get back. You know, the Democrats are in trouble. The fact is that, you know, Clinton balanced the budget. We're just spending up at the D.C. level. You know what I mean? Billions and trillions of dollars. And it just doesn't make sense. And they're giving tax incentives to the big corporations. GE doesn't pay federal taxes. Amazon doesn't pay federal taxes. These are $800 billion companies. But yet they're taking money out of me. They're taking money out of you. And what are they doing? Spending it foolishly. Let's stop the foolishness, you know? It's kind of like the State House will build 2 casinos. You know, they're approved of the Everett and the Springfield. We didn't need 2, you know? Just build 1. It's kind of like in Plymouth. They approve all these buildings and there's businesses abandoned every way you look. You know, supermarkets are going out of business because they've overbuilt. Now the fact is they can't build. I'm with 40B. That's another point. 40B should be right there where the train station is. We haven't utilized that at all. You know, people want to go to work, as you said, workforce housing. That's a big concern. Yet, you know, oh yeah, Charlie Baker and Marty Walsh got the answer by, what is it, 2030? You know, okay, that's great to say. But, you know, they only gave $60 million this year to build 2 housing projects, one in Jamaica Plain and the other one's in Rosendale. So it's kind of like $44 billion, and you guys are only going to kick in $60 million? It doesn't make sense. We're getting crumbs from the king's table. That's all we're getting here. They're sweeping it under the rug. No one's going to bother. Well, I'm going to bother them. I'm going to get up and address them and say, guess what? Start doing the people's work. It's like going to the registry. Now they've got some thing that, when you get to the registry and, you have to have your license, you have to have your birth certificate, you have to have the 2 forms of bills at your house for your passport.
That's the new kind of ID you have to have.
Who's making these laws anyway? It's the state's making these laws. Let's get off the back of the people. Let's make things easier. Going back to the pay raises. Now the state police want $16 million more this year. Let's stop writing checks. Let's start helping people, find houses, get housing, as well as, when they're unemployed, make sure they get their check. Mm-hmm. And another thing is age discrimination. How many people do I talk to? And they say that, oh, Steve, I got 2 masters. I can't find a job because they hired some other kid, that just got out of high school or got out of college, There's a lot of problems up there, and again, as you said, which one are you going to tackle? Housing is definitely the first one, but you have to get the 40Bs in, You can't have $350,000 homes and expect people to pay that in the mortgage. It's impossible. Who are we helping, Mm-hmm. That's about it.
That's it.
But
okay.
Again, my name is Stephen Michael Palmer. I ran for this election a couple of months ago. Vinny left early. I got 5,000 votes. I need those 5,000 votes back. I need everyone that made that choice. You made the right choice. I need your vote to get in the running here for the general election. Again, Hancock Adam Revere started this for taxation without representation. That's what the revolution was about. You can remember the name as the golfer. Or I heard he's got iced tea out now. Stephen Michael Palmer, running for state senate. I need your vote. I need it on the 3rd of March. I hope you get out there and vote for the right candidate for the Democratic Party, as well as a guy like me that will have your back and do the people's work.
Okay. Thank you so much. We were pleased to host this candidate for Plymouth and Barnstable County seat, Stephen Michael Palmer, a Democrat from Plymouth. Thank you.